An urban legend is a modern fictional story that spreads from person to person. They are told as truth, yet most of them are mainly untrue, if not entirely. Urban legends, in a way, are rumors on an immense scale. Even though they are false, urban legends reach a lot of people since details are changed as it goes from person to person. It is like a giant game of telephone with thousands, if not millions, of players. People tend to exaggerate to make a story more interesting. The more outlandish a story, the more people want to listen. Let's take a look at 5 urban legends and try to unravel the truth. Now, some urban tales are mostly accurate. These stories may be founded on actual occurrences, but have grown over time into fascinating tales with elements of truth. Charlie No Face. The year was 1919, and Ray Robinson was only 8 years old. One day, while walking with some friends, Ray accidentally touched a live trolley wire. Poor Ray was electrocuted so bad that the doctors were convinced he would not make it. His hands had been blown off, and his face was utterly misshapen. His eyes, nose, and lips had been highly distorted. The doctors were stunned to see Ray hold on so dearly to life. After years of slow and painful recovery, Ray was at the point where he could once again look after himself. The accident completely changed how the world viewed Ray. People were afraid to look at him, and even his own family would not eat at the table with him. This was very difficult for a spirited child. Ray always tried his best to remain positive. He was forced to seclude himself from the world, but he had his passions to keep him engaged. Ray loved to listen to baseball games on the radio, and he even taught himself how to read Braille. Roy tried to make the best of his situations, but he felt like a prisoner. He craved freedom and fresh air. His hometown of Elwood City was a quiet town, and Ray enjoyed taking walks along Route 351 after dark. Every now and then, someone would catch a glimpse of Ray as he passed under a street lamp. Thus, the legend started to take shape. People would claim they saw a monster, a ghost, or a demon. Ray soon became popular, especially amongst the high school kids. They would seek him out, hoping to catch a glimpse of Charlie No Face. Ray was dealt a tough hand, but he remained kind and refused to give up his nightly walks. He understood that freedom was precious. He would even let teenagers take pictures with him on a good night in exchange for a cigarette. Like all legends, the story took a life of its own. Ray was a faceless monster to those who didn't know him personally. But now we know better. Ray was human, a very decent human. He died in 1981, and occasionally you can find fresh flowers on his grave. Rest in peace, Ray. The Alice Killings. The thing about urban legends is that they can take up a life of their own. They grow like wildfire, spreading with incredible force and speed. The legend goes that the Alice Killings took place in Japan from 1999 to 2005. The stories of Alice in Wonderland were the theme of the murders. The killer is said to have 5 victims. The victims have no relationship, and no DNA was ever found. The very first victim was 29-year-old chef Sasaki Megumi. She was killed while walking home from a party. Her body was later found in the woods, torn into several pieces. Her organs and body parts were positioned on the branches of a nearby tree. A jack of spades, with Alice written in blood, was found in her remains. Yamane Akio, the second victim, was found dead in the bar where he sang after a mysterious man entered his apartment. His vocal cords were ripped out, and his Alice card was found in his hand. Victim number 3 was Kai Sakura. She was found in a shallow grave after being abducted from her home. Her eyes were gouged out, and her mouth was sliced open. A crown was sewn onto her hand while she was still alive, and her grave was marked with the infamous Alice card. Victims 4 and 5 were two young siblings who were found dead on the beds. Each was given a dose of lethal injection, and they each held an Alice card in their hands. The Japanese people were terrified. The details of the notorious serial killer were so gruesome and specific. The real shocker is that there isn't any evidence that these murders actually occurred in Japan. The legend of the Alice Killer is most likely a compilation of different crimes and people's imaginations all mixed together. There was, however, a serial killer in Spain who identified his victims with cards. He was sentenced in 2003. The Bunny Man. The legend says that in 1904, a bus carrying patients from an asylum in Fairfax County, Virginia, crashed. All but one of the patients was found. A patient named Douglas Griffin had made a clean getaway. Shortly after the bus incident, dead rabbits began appearing in the area. It was said that Griffin was eating rabbits to stay alive. On one Halloween night, some kids see several dead rabbits hanging from the Fairfax Station Bridge. People again assume that it's a handiwork of Griffin. The legend goes on to say that Griffin would tie teenagers from the bridge, the same way he would hang the bunnies. The rest of the story goes, if anyone's outside past midnight on Halloween, would end up like the hanged rabbits. This urban legend is a bit far from the truth. There was no insane asylum in Fairfax then, and no escaped mental patients. What really happened was a man in the 1970s who would dress up in a bunny suit and would go around committing crimes. The man dressed in a bunny suit was seen chopping down the porch of a random house and hurling an axe at someone's car. Connecting dead bunnies on the bridge and the madman in the bunny suit is the only thing legendary about this myth. The Candyman. Have you heard of the urban legend of the Candyman? It goes something like this. Get in the bathroom, close the door, turn off the lights, and say Candyman 5 times while looking in the mirror. He jumps out of the mirror and does terrible things. The 1992 movie Candyman gave wings to this legend. The origin story is that a black man was murdered by police after being falsely accused of putting a razor blade in a piece of candy and giving it to a white child. When you invoke the Candyman in the mirror, his ghost is supposed to be released to carry out his revenge. This shows us that urban legends evolve with the times. They are often related to the social issues taking place at the time. Issues of racism and police brutality shaped the myth of the Candyman. This urban legend stems from a tragic event that happened in Chicago in 1987. Ruth McCoy lived in the projects. One day, she frantically calls the police, saying that an intruder was attacking her. When the police finally came, they found her dead from gunshot wounds. It was discovered that her killer had entered from behind her medicine cabinet mirror. Plumbers would often leave an opening and pathways for easy access to the pipes, and robbers would use these crawl spaces to enter people's apartments. The Dog Boy. There is a house in Quitman, Arkansas, built around 1890. Benjamin Jackson moved in with his wife, and in 1891, they had a son. The son, Joseph, dies at 21 while serving in World War I. Years later, people living in the house claim to see a soldier's ghost roaming about. 50 years later, in 1953, a young couple living in the house gave birth to their son, Gerald Floyd Bettis. People describe Gerald as a malicious child. As a teenager, he collected stray cats and dogs, which eventually got him the name Dog Boy. Gerald would torture and kill the animals that he brought home, and people started to notice that he was becoming dangerous. He has turned into something his parents could no longer handle. Gerald was a large boy, and as a 300-pound teenager, he would physically and psychologically abuse his parents. He would lock his parents in the room where they often went for days without food. He refused to go to school and grew marijuana for money. Jero allegedly killed his father in 1981 by pushing him down the stairs and breaking his neck. In 1982, his mother mysteriously fell and broke her hip. A hospital nurse said this about Jero. He was slapping her around, she recalled, and telling her, "I'm going to have you arrested if you tell anyone what I did." Jero's mother was removed from the home and placed under protection. Jero was eventually locked up in 1984. He died in prison from a drug overdose just 4 years later. So remember the haunted house that we spoke about earlier? The ghost of Joseph Jackson is not the only spirit haunting the Quitman house. The legend evolves when people claim Jero's spirit is also haunting the house. He has the appearance of a dog, sometimes on 2 legs and sometimes on all 4. He continues to be a terror even after death. Could you spend the night in the house with the ghost of Dog Boy? Urban legends are all in good fun, right? It is entertaining to share outlandish stories of things that might have happened. Many urban legends stem from true stories, mostly shrouded in tragedy. Turning a tragic event like a murder into an urban legend is a humankind coping mechanism. Whoever tells the story at the time is in charge of the narrative. Urban legends are being formed as we speak. 10 or 20 years from now, we will hear urban legends of today's events. Thanks for watching our Late Night Top 5 channel. We're a new channel and would love to have your support by subscribing, liking, or simply dropping a comment down below. To watch more interesting late night videos, click the links to continue watching more.